Hey everyone, good evening and welcome. My name is Daniel Crum, and I'm a board member and also the Conservation Committee Chair at NPSO Portland, which of course promotes the enjoyment, study, and protection of Oregon's native plants. I'd like to especially welcome any new members tonight. So as part of our mission, we present a speaker each month on timely topics of interest to our members. And tonight, as you're probably aware, our speaker is Matt Palmquist, who's with us now, presenting Beyond Waterfalls, Exploring the Flora of Silver Falls State Park. So we'll just go over some quick Zoom etiquette. If everybody could just make sure that your audio and video are muted during the program, we'd really appreciate it. And if you have a question during the program, just click the chat button at the bottom of your screen and type it into the chat box. And after our presenter is done speaking, then at the end, we'll take questions and then it'll give you some additional time to interact there. And we also have another announcement tonight, which is that if you're planning on volunteering with the Portland chapter, now's the perfect time to learn more about our open board positions. They allow for opportunities to network with other board members, build your skill set, and give back to NPSO. It's been a really enriching experience for me, I know for sure. So I'm sure we'll have some links to our email at the end of the presentation, but just in case, it's also npsopdxchapter@gmail.com. Again, it's npsopdxchapter@gmail.com. And someone from the board will get back to you, and our elections are going to be in January. So on to tonight's speaker, we have Matt Palmquist with us, who's a native Oregonian. He grew up in Salem and studied German at Pacific Lutheran University and spent 2 years teaching English in Germany as part of the Fulbright program. After he got back to the US, he pivoted his efforts toward outdoor education and as a park ranger at Silver Falls, where he has worked since 2007. Matt there leads interpretive and educational programs throughout the park, and in his spare time, he can be found exploring different ecoregions throughout the West, looking for plants, insects, and birds. Welcome, Matt.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here tonight. I am an active member of the Willamette Valley chapter of NPSO, so I'm very familiar with the organization. And before I get started tonight, I just have a question for everybody. And it's something I like to ask visitors when they come to the park for in-person programs. So I'm curious how many of you have been to Silver Falls. So if you could do me a favor and go down to the bottom of your screen to the React button. And if you click on there and then just give me a thumbs up if you have been to Silver Falls before. This kind of gives me an idea of who all has been here. Okay, wow, I'm seeing a lot of thumbs up. That is wonderful. If you haven't been to Silver Falls before, I hope that after tonight, you will want to come here and visit and experience all that the park has to offer. So with that, I am going to share my screen and I'll get started with my presentation here. All right, there we go. So my little presentation tonight is titled Beyond Waterfalls. And we're going to explore a little bit deeper into the park than a lot of our visitors usually do. And I wanted to start off by giving a little context of where Silver Falls is. So I've got a map here of northwestern Oregon, Portland, of course, right up here. And Silver Falls is right down here. We're about 25 miles to the east of Salem. We're in the Western Cascade foothills. The park is at an elevation of about 1,300 feet on average. So it's not especially high in elevation, but we are definitely up off of the valley floor. Zooming in a little bit, something you might notice about Silver Falls, it's this really dark green blob here. And we are state parks, so we're administered by the Oregon Parks and Recreation Department. And the park is completely surrounded by private land. So you'll see lots of farm fields here. We are surrounded by a lot of Christmas tree farms and grass seed farms. And there is private timberland on the east side of the park, between the park and the Willamette National Forest, which forms a large area of federally owned public land to the east of us. So we're kind of a little green island of habitat. And tonight we're going to cover some of the different kinds of habitats that we will find here at Silver Falls. First, I wanted to go over some numbers just to give you a little bit of the scope of our park. So Silver Falls is the largest state park in Oregon. And we are known, of course, for our 10 waterfalls. So if you think about numbers in the park, the number that most people associate with the park is 10 for the Trail of 10 Falls. In the rainy season of the year, which is beginning now, we actually have a lot more waterfalls. We have a lot of little ephemeral waterfalls that only show up when it's really wet, but these are the 10 big waterfalls. They are not very creatively named. If you've been here, especially if you have gotten lost on the trail, you will know that the names are not very unique. So we've got South Falls, Lower South Falls, Upper North Falls, North Falls, Middle North Falls, Lower North Falls, Double Falls, Twin Falls, Winter Falls. And then the one that stands out is this little one here, which is Drake Falls. We're going to talk about Drake in just a couple minutes here. So this is the main draw of the park that most people come to see. Our average visitor is not necessarily interested in plants, maybe animals. Everyone always wants to see a black bear or a mountain lion, but everyone comes here to see the waterfalls. And we get a lot of visitors. The park itself is just over 9,000 acres, so it's about 1/10 the size of the city of Portland. We have 47 miles of trails here in the park. So if you were to take off walking from Portland and walk all the way to Salem, you'd walk the same distance as the mileage of trails that we have here in the park. Probably 95% of our visitors sticks to the most popular trail, but there is a lot to explore here. We have about 348 plant taxa here. So there are a lot of great plants to find while you're here. Overall, we get about 1.6 million visitors here a year. To put that in perspective, Crater Lake, which is the only national park in Oregon, gets an average of about 750,000 visitors a year. So we get about twice that. And a lot of that is location, 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 because we're only half an hour outside of Salem, an hour and 15 minutes from Portland. So we get a lot of visitors. Part of what I do mostly educational work, but I do a lot of other things. But my busiest times of year are, well, 3 seasons of the year, but especially in the spring and in the fall when we're hosting our school field trips. And in the 10 years that I have been coordinating our field trips, we have had 240 field trips with over 15,000 students here. So this is another really great experience that we get to lead for visitors, for our young visitors. We get them excited about plants and animals and waterfalls. When I am not teaching, I keep busy doing a lot of other things. And one of our more interesting statistics that we like to share to show how busy we are is that here at the park, on average, we use 530 miles of toilet paper every year. Those 1.6 million visitors, have to use the bathroom a lot. That is one of my other job duties when I'm not teaching and leading interpretive programs. Cleaning bathrooms, something every park ranger gets the joy to do. Let's move on here to little park history. So Silver Falls is in a what is now a beautifully natural area. But if you were to get in a time machine and travel back, 120 years or so, the area would look a lot different. So in that area of early European American settlement, the foothills here in the Western Cascades were settled a little bbit later than the lower areas in the Willamette Valley. Of course, these areas had been long inhabited by the Kalapuya and the Malala, but the first European American settlers started arriving here in the early 1880s. And of course, they looked out at the beautiful forest. They saw nothing but board feet. The area was covered in beautiful stands of old growth forest, and they wasted no time in getting to work clearing the forest to send all of that wood downstream to build houses in Silverton and Salem and Portland and all over in Western Oregon. Similarly, there were a lot of homesteaders here who eked out a living farming. And in addition to that, there had been several big wildfires in the area that burned up some of the timber as well. And this is a view of South Falls. The waterfall is just right here. You can barely see it. This photograph is from 1916. And you can see here the background. That forest had burned pretty severely. There's a lot of young growth coming up there. And similarly, here's a photograph of North Falls, also from the early 1900s. And you can see the landscape then looked a lot different than it looks today. The waterfalls, of course, were just as impressive, but the surrounding landscape was not that scenic, I suppose you could say. So this area was pretty well utilized by people. But around the turn of the century, there was a local photographer who came to Silver Falls and started photographing the waterfalls. And his name was June Drake, and he just fell in love with this area. So he started coming up and kind of bushwhacking his own trails to the waterfalls and taking his big glass plate camera around so that he could photograph all of the waterfalls. And he took really beautiful photographs of the waterfalls. Here's one of South Falls, our most popular waterfall. And he published these magazines and pamphlets and postcards and everything so that he could spread the word about this beautiful place of Silver Falls. He even had a lot of his original photographs hand tinted. So you can see here, I'll just go back and forth for a second. There's the original photograph. And a lot of these photographs were then hand colored with a tiny, tiny paintbrush so that they could give a little bit more of an idea of how beautiful and verdant it is here at Silver Falls. If you're interested in seeing some of these, we do have some of the original hand-tinted photographs on display here in the South Falls Lodge. Now, June Drake also was a savvy political lobbyist, and his goal was to get the area around Silver Falls preserved as a state park. Well, actually, he thought first that it would be a great national park. He actually met with the superintendent of Crater Lake, who came up here on a tour in 1926 to see if Silver Falls would be a fitting addition to the National Park Service. Unfortunately, he was not very impressed. He was impressed with the waterfalls, but he was not impressed with all of the human activity that had degraded the landscape. And he wrote this very kind of flowery languaged report that he sent into the NPS headquarters in Washington, where he said that the area was beautiful, but it had heard the sound of the axe for too many years. And the view from one of the waterfalls as you looked across the canyon, the stumps on the opposite side looked like so many dark headstones. So that's not really a ringing endorsement for the beauty of this area as a park. But June Drake persevered, and he eventually met with the first director of Oregon State Parks, Samuel Boardman, and convinced boardman to make the investment and start buying up the land. And Silver Falls opened as a park in 1933. So we have June Drake to thank for this early preservation and some foresight into protecting this place. Now I want to dive a little bit into the plants themselves because that's what everyone is here for. So I have a little overview of the park here. The park being 9,000 acres, that is both a relatively small area, but it can also be a relatively large area when you think about it. And this shows some of the different types of vegetation found here in the park. So in the darkest green here, that is our mature coniferous forest. And we get questions a lot here about old growth. And old growth is kind of tricky because there's not necessarily one definition of old growth. We generally think of it as forest that has been undisturbed by human activity in the last 150 or 200 years. You can think about it a lot by the structure of the forest, where a mature old growth forest is going to have trees of a lot of different ages. It's going to have a very complex structure. And that being said, we don't have very much old growth or mature coniferous forest left here. We do have some little patches. Some of them are actually pretty easy to find here in the park. But in the less visited areas of the park, we have the highest concentration of mature trees there. But you'll see the vast majority is a mixed coniferous age. So a lot of it is second growth forest. A lot of our forest has been replanted or regenerated within the last 150 years. We also have some areas of younger timber. And in this light green here, you'll see our riparian areas. And that is actually the forest that most of our visitors get to see because our most popular trail, the Canyon Trail, follows the forks of Silver Creek right through the riparian area. So this is the type of forest that most of our visitors get to see. You will notice also some of this really light beige colored, which are meadows. And that is a vegetative system that not a lot of people think of when they think of Silver Falls, but we actually have some really, really cool examples of meadows here, and we will be revisiting those in just a few minutes. So I wanted to go through just some highlights of the plants that you will find here at Silver Falls. So I wanted to start with the biggest ones. So we have to talk about our conifers. Now, as far as conifer diversity goes here, we really don't have a very diverse conifer forest here. Not like if you go down into the Siskiyou Mountains or the Klamath Mountains in southwestern Oregon, where there are 30 plus species of conifers. We really only have about 5 species that are found here at Silver Falls. Of course, the first one is the Douglas fir, the ubiquitous tree of Western Oregon. From what I've read, Douglas firs make up 80% of the conifers here in Western Oregon. And I definitely believe it from both my time here at Silver Falls as well as exploring all of our forests beyond here. So they make up the dominant forest cover here at Silver Falls, and they do get pretty large. So the second picture from the left here is the largest Douglas fir that we have here in the park. It's about 250 feet tall. It's not a tree that you're going to easily find, though. You have to do some bushwhacking to get to this tree. But we do still have some of those large old trees. We had a tree fall across one of our trails probably about 8 or 9 years ago. It was a Douglas fir, 6 feet in diameter, and it was suspended above the trail and it was high enough that you could still get underneath it. So we left it for a little while, but then it started kind of sloughing down. And when we cut it out of the way, it took a crew of 5. It took 2 days to cut it out. And we started counting the rings on it and lost track at 454. So we do still have some very big old trees here in the park. Our second most common conifer is the Western hemlock. And the Western hemlock is a beautiful shade-tolerant tree that you'll often find growing on these nurse logs. One of the hallmarks of the forest here at Silver Falls is how wet it is. We get an average of 80 inches of rain here a year, which is about twice the average rainfall of Portland. And things in our rainforest here tend to decay very slowly. So we have lots and lots of these old nurse logs and stumps that were trees that may have been cut down 100 years ago and are still nurturing the forest and recycling those nutrients. Almost every single one of them has at least one hemlock tree growing on it. Some of them have a dozen hemlock trees growing on them. We do have some western red cedar here in the park, but it is a lot less common. It is thought that it was more common here before all of the intensive logging took place. Western red cedar is a water-loving tree, so it does grow best in the river canyons here. And today we do have some, but it's not a dominant tree at all. We do have some pockets of grand fir, which is the only true fir that is native to Silver Falls. And these can get pretty massive. We have a lot of 150-foot tall grand fir trees. They're also the best smelling tree in the forest. If you break up their needles, they have a really wonderful citrus smell. Uh, my favorite conifer that we have here is, some would say, the least conifer-like, which is the Pacific yew. And of course, the yew tree is the most shade tolerant of all of these trees. It grows extremely slowly. It has this wonderful reddish bark on the outside, and it will spend decades just living in the undergrowth in the shade of the Douglas firs and the hemlocks. And of course, I would say it's the least conifer-like because its cone doesn't look at all like a cone. It's got that classic little red aril, which looks like a red berry with a little seed on the inside. But one of the things I love about our forest is that we have all of this diversity of trees that require different things in the forest. And I love to show this off to people, especially kids. We talk about forest succession and growth and our Douglas fir trees, which of course are very shade intolerant. They need a lot of sunlight to get established. And on the opposite end of the spectrum is our yew tree growing in the depths of the shade. And so I like to show this off by looking at a couple of tree rounds. And these are both about 6 inches in diameter. So they're the same size. And if you look here, you can see a dramatic difference in the spacing between the rings on these two trees. So this Douglas fir was pretty young when it was cut down, but you see nice spacing between those rings. This tree was growing out in the open where it had a lot of sunlight and could grow really quickly. It was 18 or 19 years old when it was cut down. And on the other hand, we have this yew. This yew fell over one of our trails, and I cut it up, and I had to use a magnifying glass to count the rings on this, and I counted 84. So this tree was the same diameter at 84 years as this Douglas fir was at 19. Which says a lot about their growing conditions. And it's a really fun thing to see. It's wonderful for people to get to see that in person too, because the density and the texture of the wood on the yew is pretty remarkable. Let's move on to some trees that will not ever get quite as big as those conifers. We have our deciduous trees. And by far the most common deciduous tree here is the red alder. And the red alder thrives in riparian areas next to the creeks and also in recently disturbed areas. Now, I didn't even put a picture of the actual tree. I put a picture of its leaves because the red alder, it's often overlooked as kind of like a boring tree, but it has a vital role that it plays here in the forest because it is able to fertilize the rest of the forest. It has a bacteria that grows on its roots that allows it to fix nitrogen. So it can take nitrogen from the atmosphere and convert it into nitrogen that can be transferred into the soil, where other trees can absorb it. So I've heard it called the fabulous fertilizer factory of the forest, which is a great way to think of this kind of overlooked tree. And this time of year, the alder leaves are falling. They're some of the last leaves to fall here. And you'll notice that almost all of them are still green. And this is due to the fact that the nitrogen leaves, or the alder leaves, have so much nitrogen in them that they don't even need to draw that nitrogen-rich chlorophyll back into the tree for the winter. They can give it up. They have plenty of that nitrogen, and these leaves will then decay and fertilize the soil even further. So red alder is often overlooked, but a really wonderful part of the forest. The trees that I would say are most people's favorites, though, are the maples. We have three species of maples. The most common is probably the vine maple, which grows in the understory of our forest. They turn these beautiful colors in the fall. If they're out in the full sun, they'll turn this bright red. And if they're in the shade, they tend to turn a kind of pale yellow. It's actually kind of neat seeing some differences in the leaf color. And in areas where it's sunny and they're turning red, if there are leaves that are overlapping each other, you can lift up the top leaf and there will be almost like a bad sunburn line on the leaf underneath it, where the top leaf will be red and the lower leaf will be red, except for that spot where they're overlapping, and that will be yellow. So it's a really kind of cool thing to explore if you're here in the fall. The other really common maple is the big leaf maple. And these grow all over in Western Oregon here. And they love growing in the Silver Creek Canyon. So we see a lot of them next to the waterfalls. And they get those massive leaves, a foot and a half across. And every year we try to see who can find the biggest big leaf maple leaf. Um, we do have a little pocket of Douglas maples, which are much more common a little bit higher up in the mountains and east of the Cascades, where they replace the vine maple as a pretty dominant understory tree. We had some beautiful Pacific dogwoods. And the biggest one that I've ever seen is actually just about 200 feet from my office. It's up here on the right. You can see there's some picnic tables down here underneath it. It is a massive dogwood. And this little meadow or grassy area is kind of circled by Pacific dogwoods that are all pretty large. And we do have some Oregon ash that grows here in some of our wetter areas. We'll talk about ash just a little bit later as well. Getting a little bit smaller to our shrubs or small trees, depending on who you ask. We have a lot of deciduous shrubs and small trees. Uh, in kind of wetter areas, we have a lot of cascara and Pacific crabapple. And in this middle picture here, you can see all the yellow in the background. That is cascara. And then this here is the Pacific crabapple. If you haven't seen the Pacific crabapple before, it's one of my favorite deciduous trees, and it turns beautiful and red in the fall, and it has tiny, tiny little fruits. They're only less than an inch long, and they grow in little clusters. They are edible, but they're pretty tart. And they are a favorite for wildlife. So we will see lots of animals, everything from raccoons to coyotes to pileated woodpeckers eating the little crab apples this time of year. We also have a lot of hazel and bitter cherry and red osier dogwood. And if you are here in the middle of the summer, in June and July, you will see so much ocean spray growing in the drier areas. And one of the plants that I get asked about most often is the salmonberry. And the salmonberry grows everywhere in thickets where it is wet. And it is wet in a lot of places here, so we have a lot of salmonberries. I will no doubt get asked probably 20 times every June, hey, Ranger Matt, what are those orange raspberries on the trail? And are they edible? Because I just ate 3 handfuls of them. So they are, of course, edible, and that is our good education moment where we can talk about not eating things that you don't know. But the salmon berries are really, really common. If you haven't had salmon berries before and you know what they are when you see them and you try them, you have kind of a 50-50 chance of getting one that tastes good or one that tastes kind of bland. Sometimes they also taste pretty bad. So you just have to kind of test them um, and see if you get a good one or not. We do have some evergreen shrubs and trees, as well as all of those deciduous ones. One of the more common ones we have is the golden chinkapin. I didn't have a photo handy of our chinkapin. Have these wonderful spiny covered fruits here. I've got them right here. And they are actually in the beech family, so they are related to oak trees. And then we have a lot of shrubs in the heath family, Ericaceae. We have some Pacific madrone here. Those usually are found around the edges of the park. We don't have a lot of that here. It's a very highly prized firewood. So we kind of guess that there may have been more of that here as well that was removed long ago. We've got Pacific rhododendrons, of course, with their beautiful pink flowers. And one of the most common understory shrubs is salal. My favorite story about salal has to do with David Douglas, the plant explorer who visited the Pacific Northwest 200 years ago, collecting plants to send back for gardens in England and Scotland. And salal was the first plant that he saw, or one of the first plants, when he got off of the ship along the Oregon coast in Astoria. And he said, "So pleased was I that I could scarcely see anything but it." And this has kind of a dual meaning because he was so excited to see this first beautiful plant in the understory, but also it may have been the only plant that he could see because it grows so extensively, especially on the coast. But we have it a lot. We have seas of salal here at Silver Falls. Now, wildflowers are an area of special interest for me. I love wildflowers. I could give a whole 3-hour presentation on wildflowers, but I'm going to spare you that and recommend instead that you come out and visit in the springtime because we have some wonderful wildflowers here. So I just included a little smattering of some of my favorites. We have this beautiful Penstemon cellulatus that grows in the canyons. Baneberry, which is highly toxic, but a beautiful flower nonetheless. We have our spotted coral root here, which grows out in the dark shade of the forest. Columbia windflower. These are so bright and big. I mean, they're about this big around, and they stand out really well in the middle of May in the dark forest. This poison larkspur, Delphinium trollifolium, is all over the place too, and it gets really big. This can be 4 feet tall easily. Rosy plectritis is a common plant found in some of our meadows. And then, of course, probably my favorite is the calypso orchid or the fairy slipper. Fairy slippers are really prone to disturbance. If you step on them or trample them too much, that can often kill the plant. But we have a lot of them here. And this particular spot is a really high concentration of them. It's right next to a parking lot, and people walk by it all the time. And only the people who know what they're looking for will stop and take a look. But in this little patch, it's about 100 square feet, and I have counted over 90 calypso orchids just in that spot. So that is a real treasure. We'll see some more of our waterfalls, or wildflowers, sorry. But I want to talk about some of the kind of unique landscapes that we have here in the park. So as I mentioned, most of the park is covered in forest. Most of it is mixed conifer forest. But in our riparian areas, actually just above the riparian areas, we have some really great rocky cliffs. And if you come at this time of year, you will see water dripping off of just about everything. And that does a lot for a lot of really beautiful plants. So we have lots of monkey flowers. I love these little chickweed monkey flowers. And this nettle saxifrage. This is literally growing like a wall of saxifrage. We have about 20 documented species in the saxifrage family, and a large number of them are found on these rocky cliffs and seeps, and April and May are a wonderful time to see them. If you move up a little bit higher, you'll see some of these areas that dry out a little bit more in summer. And we actually have some Oregon white oak growing on some of them, which is a pretty common tree down in the lower parts of the valley, but it's only known from a couple of locations here at Silver Falls. So as much as I would love to have some oak savanna here, the forest is dominated by those conifers. So we cherish the few oaks that we do have. Meadows. Now, I mentioned that meadows were one of the smallest types of habitat or vegetation that you could find here. And right in the middle of the park, there is a natural meadow. And this area was actually homesteaded in the 1880s. And it has some of the most unique plants in the park that I don't see anywhere else. Um, so in the fall, right now, it's really beautiful. All this red under here is dwarf bilberry. That's the Vaccinium cespitosum, as well as some Douglas's spirea growing up here. Um, we have lots of Western buttercup, which again, it's a common plant in Oregon, but this is the only place at Silver Falls that it grows and is out in this one meadow area. And every once in a while, I will be surprised by a plant that I haven't seen. So I've worked at Silver Falls for 18 years now. And the wonderful thing about getting to work in an area for such a long time is that you get to know the landscape really, really well. And I keep track of all the plants here. I have a little log that I keep track of when the flowers bloom. And I know where to find a lot of things, but every once in a while, I'll find something new and exciting. And about 4 years ago, I was leading a hike for the Willamette Valley chapter of the Native Plant Society, and we came across these hooded ladies' tresses growing out in this dry meadow. And I was so shocked to see that. I had never seen them growing there before. So that's one of the delights of being out here is finding new things. Now, here's a little bit more of the same meadow area. If you are up there at the right time of year in late July and August, you'll see tons of this King's Scepter gentian. And this grows usually 2 feet, sometimes even 3 feet tall. And it grows in like the wet edges of the meadows. And you'll see this on this right picture here. Along the edge there, there's this little brushy area, again, full of cascara and crabapple and some ashes. And right behind there, we have a grove of quaking aspens. And the quaking aspen is the most widespread deciduous tree in North America. It's found from coast to coast, from sea level to subalpine habitats, but it's very uncommon west of the Cascades. And we have a little stand of it here along the edge of the forest. There's some cottonwood and some ash mixed in there as well. And this has also been a mystery for a long time. We don't know if that is a naturally occurring grove of aspens. The habitat is right for it, or if somebody planted it at some point. But it is one of my favorite places to go and just listen to the shimmering leaves. And again, while I was out there a few years ago, I found a plant that had not been documented here before, and it's this little European or northern starflower here. We have this is Lysomachia europaea. We have the Western starflower, which is much more common, but we had never seen this before, and it's growing out in the wet meadow edge here with all of the gentian and some great camas and these shrubs and small trees. And we have another meadow up on the north end of the park that is completely different. And this is a vernally wet meadow, and it's more commonly seen at lower elevations down on the valley floor. But this has really shallow bedrock. So the soil here is super thin. There is a layer of basalt lava rock just a few inches under the soil. So the plants that can grow here are pretty limited, and it is a hotspot for camas in our park. Um, it's a vernally wet area, so it gets a lot of, or all of its water, I guess, from surface water. So in the rainy season, it's pretty wet and it has some little waterways going through it. But then once it stops raining, it dries out really fast. So there are both species of camas here. We've got the common camas and the great camas can be found in this area. And then as it dries out, we'll see kind of a change of characters. As the camas senesces and sets seed, we'll see all of this death camas. This is meadow death camas. And this is one of my favorite pictures because whenever I'm talking about camas, a lot of people will ask about white camas. And there's this assumption that if there is a white flowered camas, it is death camas, which is highly toxic. But in reality, that's not true. There are genetic variations, just like in all of the other flowers, and we see a fair number of these white flowered common camas. And then right next to it, you see the death camas, which looks quite different. The flowers are shaped very differently. And so seeing them side by side is really helpful. And then a little bit later, we have this hyacinth brodea and lots of this rosy plectritis that will take over blooming in these meadows as they dry out. So that's a pretty stark contrast to all of those woodland areas that we have, and it's a really wonderful place to see. I try to visit this at least a few times throughout the spring to see how the flowers are progressing. So I wanted to talk just about some of the threats that we have to our plants here at Silver Falls. And the first one I wanted to talk about is fire. And of course, fire is neither a good or bad force. It simply is, but it can have very positive and very negative impacts. And as you all probably know, in the last 25 years, we have been seeing a lot of warming climate and worsening fire behavior. And here in the Western Cascades, we are not immune to forest fires. The first 10 years or so that I worked here, we never had any fires. That changed in 2018 when we had a fire called the Silver Creek Fire. You can see it here on the left from an airplane. This started burning in a pretty remote drainage within the park. You can see that just off into the bottom right corner here is one of those meadow areas that we just looked at. We were really lucky with this fire because it happened in July, which was before the rest of the fire season really heated up. So they were able to attack this with a lot of resources. It only burned 27 acres, which is like not anything. But then we had a much bigger fire in September of 2020. You probably all, if you were here at that time, you'll remember those Labor Day fires. That was the most afraid I have ever been at work. I was working the night shift when those east winds were starting to blow in and the power went out and the sky turned orange and it was the darkest I have ever seen it. We were really, really fortunate with the Beachy Creek fire because that fire took off and it burned overall about 194,000 acres. And the winds changed just as it was starting to reach the boundaries of Silver Falls. So it only burned about 150 acres here in the park. We had put in some fire line to protect the park. We were really lucky the winds changed when they did. But we do have some burned areas. It was kind of mixed severity here. And the areas with higher amounts of old trees tended to fare better. You'll see this massive Douglas fir here in the middle. What you can't see is its green intact canopy. So it burned around here at the base, but that thick bark that the Douglas fir is known for helped to protect it from burning. And then areas that were more even aged and especially younger trees tended to have higher mortality. We do actually have a middle school that is based in Salem, the Jane Goodall Environmental Middle School, and they have been doing some scientific study of this area every year since the fire. So they spend a lot of time out there doing some qualitative analysis of how these areas are um, bouncing back from the fire. So fire is something that is always on our minds. Let's see. Invasive plants are also a big threat here. So we do have quite a few invasives here. The one that I think might be the most widespread is Scotch broom. Ironically, this was planted by state agencies 100 years ago to control erosion, and now it has overtaken large areas of land. You see this nice open meadow. It's got some beautiful lupins growing in here and a lot of Scotch broom. So we spend a lot of time trying to manage Scotch broom. We have an integrated pest management plan here that kind of steers how we manage all of these invasives. And so a lot of these bigger areas, we can't control it with just hand pulling. So we do a mixture of herbicide application and mowing to keep it down. Foxglove, of course, is very, very common throughout the Northwest as a garden escapee from the 19th century. Himalayan blackberry, false brome, and my number one least favorite plant is the shiny leaf geranium. And this is a relatively new one on the scene. We've only had it here for about the past 5 years or so, and it is very hard to eradicate, and it's shade tolerant, so it is very good at taking over understory areas. We also have an invasive insect. I hope all of you have heard about the emerald ash borer. It's been in the news a lot lately since it was found in Portland. I mentioned that we don't have a lot of ash trees. They're concentrated in kind of three especially wet areas of the park. In this photograph, you see there are these beautiful yellow trees here in amongst these kind of dead standing alder trees. So the emerald ash borer is a horrible threat, of course, to all of the native ash trees here. And we don't have a lot of ash here. We are still worried about them, but we're in a great place because we get so many visitors that we can do a lot of outreach about the emerald ash borer. So we have actually developed our own junior ranger curriculum about the emerald ash borer to get people thinking about it. And if you do one of these activity books, you get a cool emerald ash borer sticker. Um, and our number one message with this, of course, is well, to learn what an ash tree looks like. It is not one of the, I'd say, big three easily recognizable trees that people recognize, which in my experience, people recognize oak trees, maple trees, and pine trees. So everything is one of those. The ash trees, once people know what they look like, they start to realize how many of them are around where they live. So we really try to promote or combat this plant blindness and also urge people to buy their firewood locally because moving firewood is a huge threat for moving invasive species. On a more positive note, if you're interested in coming to the park and learning some more about plants, we do have lots of opportunities while you're here. We do offer seasonal walks. So usually starting in April, we'll offer weekly walks here that are plant-based walks. But if you are visiting in the off season, we do have some other things that you can take advantage of. So in the South Falls Lodge, we have a little area that's called the Naturalist Nook. And we update our displays in there for every season. So right now, if you come and visit, we have a display about fall leaves. So these are all leaves that I collected, and we made this display to help identify the leaves that people are falling on the ground or finding on the ground after they fall. We have a new addition this year, and we have a display of leaves that are made from wood from their respective trees. So we have everything from the big leaf maple all the way down to these little service berries and ocean spray. So you can find that as well in the Naturalist Nook. Or if you want to find out some more about some plants and it's not the right time of year to find them, you can let me know. And we've started a little herbarium here. So I have about 160 pressed and preserved specimens of plants that will give you a good look at what the plants look like if you can't find them in season. Now I just wanted to finish up by previewing some of our hikes. So if you haven't heard, the Willamette Valley chapter is hosting the annual meeting coming up in May of 2026. It will be the 29th through the 31st. And we are offering 2 hikes here at Silver Falls that I will be leading. And the first one is this section of the north part of the park. And this is probably the section of the canyon trail that is the least used. Most people start at South Falls. So this hike will start here at the North Canyon District. And that is a brand new parking area. It's just in its 3rd year now. And this is a 3.3-mile loop. So we'll hike down this trail, the Twin Falls Trail, and connect to the Canyon Trail. And we'll follow that here until we get up to North Falls. We will hike behind North Falls, and then we will hike up to Upper North Falls, and then backtrack and hike on the North Rim Trail, which is a beautiful trail. Some highlights of this hike that people, I think, will be excited about. Some of the plants that we'll see, Scowler's corydalus is extremely prevalent on this section of the trail. And that time of year, mid to late May, it is all over the place. This is one of those plants that I get a ton of questions about in the spring when it's blooming. We'll see lots of salmon berries. It'll be a little late for the flowers, but a little early for the fruits. They'll be kind of in an in-between stage. We'll walk past Twin Falls here, which is one of the smaller waterfalls, but we'll also see some really nice rocky outcrops with lots of sedums, like this broadleaf stone crop. We'll hike behind a waterfall, get to see some really cool geology. And then one of the best sections of the trail is the trail up to Upper North Falls. It's very wet on the hillside leading up there. There is a ton of Devil's Club. And Devil's Club is the most formidable plant in the forest. I think it's got spines on just about every surface of the plant. It should be blooming around that time of year. If we're lucky, we will see some false bugbane. This is Troutvateria carolinensis. And I've only seen this growing in a few parts of the park, and that trail is one of them. They look like little fireworks to me. And of course, there's a lot of stink currant, which I think it's a bad rep because it has kind of a foul smell, but it has these wonderful little clusters of flowers. And on our way back up, we'll probably see some spotted coral root, some western wild ginger, and we'll get this great view of North Falls. And this is a pretty unique waterfall view within the park because you can see the creek flowing above the waterfall. You can see the water go over the edge. You can see underneath the waterfall and below the waterfall as well. And the other hike that we have will be to visit this vernally wet meadow on the north end of the park. I didn't put a map on this one. This is an area that is not easily accessed by the public. It's kind of off the beaten path a little bit, but we'll go on a hike. It's about a mile round trip to see this. At that time of year, we will probably see some camas blooming still. Everything here at Silver Falls blooms about 3 weeks later than it does down in the valley. So while the camas in the valley peaks towards the end of April, early May. It blooms a lot later up here, depending on the year. So we'll see both of the species of camas, the common camas and the great camas, as well as death camas, and a lot of other cool plants on this hike. So I'd like to finish up just letting you know if you have any questions about the park or want to schedule a tour or a hike or anything, you can always reach out to me. I love having groups in the park, especially groups that are interested in plants. And we do have some great activities that are coming up. The first one that we have, which is a month from today, is our annual Winter Festival. So this will take place the weekend of December 13th and 14th. We have all kinds of great activities. This is a really long-standing event here at the park. We will have wreath making with native plant materials. You can build a bird nest box with a Salem Audubon. You can make a bird craft or go on a guided plant walk. Actually, a winter tree ID hike with John Savage from our local Willamette Valley chapter. We'll have some mushroom walks, and we have educational discovery tables where you can learn everything about why we have seasons and why it's dark in the winter. Or if you're coming on Saturday, you can get a chance to learn about big leaf maple syrup and taste some big leaf maple syrup with the Oregon Maple Project. So that is a really great activity. I hope you come and visit on one of those days. Or if you're interested in volunteering for that, we do have volunteer shifts, and you can reach out to me and, if you're interested in volunteering. For wildflower season, we have our annual Birding and Wildflower Festival, which will be May 9th and 10th. It's Mother's Day weekend. This is another great event that has been going on for many years. We have a big wildflower show. We usually have about 130 to 150 species on display. We have a native plant sale. We have wildflower walks. And we also have lots of bird activities. So if you're interested in birds, you can come on any number of free bird walks as well. And one more thing to promote that's a little closer to home for you. The Oregon Historical Society currently has an exhibit about June Drake, that landmark photographer who helped to protect Silver Falls. So it's going on until February. If you're a Multnomah County resident, you get in for free. I'd highly recommend it. I haven't been to see this particular exhibit yet, but he has some really wonderful photographs, and I hope everyone takes a chance to go and see. And with that, thank you all for your patience. That was a little longer than I had planned, but I hope you learned something new, and we can move on to some questions.
That was awesome. Thanks, Matt. Always great to see Coral Root getting some love.
Mm-hmm.
So, guys, what we're going to do here is for the initial kind of barrage of questions, we're just going to take those in the chat, and Matt will answer them from there. And then after we get the bulk of them out of the way, then we'll switch over to voice questions, and we'll have a little bit of a social hour as well.
Okay, I see the question about the visiting the Camas Meadow. Um, I'd say that is one that we would prefer you to reach out to us to go on. The parking, there's not really any public parking at the area that accesses that. And it's next to one of our, it's right on the edge of the park. It's next to a private landowner who's like very protective, and they get a lot of people turning the wrong way and going down their road. So you might be met by a leery neighbor who's questioning why you're there. But if you're interested in coming and viewing it, you can either come on our field trip at the annual meeting next year or reach out to me and we can arrange visiting it. It's also a bit of a culturally sensitive area. It is a known location for the Grand Ronde tribe, so it is a place of first foods for them, and we want to protect it and keep it as pristine as we can. Oh, Christine had a question about, do pre-European settlement maps or pollen studies indicate what other tree species might have been present before the early logging? That is a wonderful question. I don't know about pollen studies. Actually, that's something I would like to look into now. The earliest map that we know of was the 1850 General Land Office Survey, I believe it was, which was quite extensive in mapping the Willamette Valley. I don't think there are really any other species that were noted to be here. But some of our um, documented plant species that we don't really see here anymore are trees like Western white pine. This seems to be a little bit low in elevation. I see Sue is asking about true pines in the park as well. So we don't have any native pines other than a couple ponderosa pines, which I don't believe are here on their own merit. I believe those were planted at some point. Um, and a couple of Scots pines, which have been planted as well. But other than that, we don't have any other true pines in the park, unless if you ask most of our visitors, and they will say that all the trees are pine trees. Yeah, so I hope I answered that question about the maps. There could have been more aspen trees, or there could have been pine trees. Some of our plant lists have some plants that are not really often found here, like Pacific silver fir. It's a little low in elevation for that as well. I see another question about, are there herbarium samples from the area? Yes, I believe there are quite a few. We'll have to look. If you haven't visited the Oregon Flora website, that is a fantastic resource for seeing herbarium samples. A lot of the plants that are listed on there are from plant lists. But I believe there are some in the OSU herbarium that are from here at Silver Falls. And then we have our own little growing herbarium that is a little passion project of mine.
Well, thanks, Matt. Yeah, feel free to unmute yourself, ask questions. This is kind of an informal social time. We're also excited to welcome any new members too. So if you want to put your name in the chat and introduce yourself, feel free to do that, or unmute yourself and introduce yourself as well. And then the last minute reminder too that we remembered is that December 11th, we have our photo show. So keep that in mind. That's an annual get together where you can show your photos from the year that you've taken that you're excited about. So keep that on your radar if that's something you want to go to.
Well, I just wanted to comment, one of my favorite plants that I find on the wet seeps in the canyon is the Roman zophia.
Yes.
That's a fun one to see.
Yeah. I remember first seeing that, and I couldn't figure it out. I thought it was a saxifrage of some sort, and of course it's in the waterleaf family. And that's a real beauty, and it can be quite extensive in the early spring.
Speak up if we have a question?
Yeah, feel free.
Oh, okay. I live in Hoodland in the Brightwood area of the west side of Mount Hood at 1,100 feet, and for 45 years. And I'm on a few acres on the Sandy River and Hackett Creek. And every time I'm sort of discovering new things, even now. So I have one pine tree, which tentatively ID'd as a lodgepole pine, which doesn't really grow here normally, but it is very mature. It's a 100, it's tall. And I also have found I have one Douglas maple, which I've ID'd from the seeds. So that always excites me, but it's like, why is it so limited?
Those plant mysteries are wonderful and also can be very frustrating.
Yeah.
And those pines, I'm always kind of thrown off whenever I drive up Highway 26 towards Mount Hood because you start seeing lodgepole pines there at pretty low elevations.
On the west side?
Yeah, usually it's like past zigzag and rhododendron.
Okay,
You'll
so
start.
it's higher in elevation, yeah,
Yeah, that
right.
seems pretty low.
So an area disturbed with the 64 floods, so
Oh,
I have areas, I have old growth, I'll call them old growth Doug fir because they're, 4 feet across. So, but always exciting to find a new plant.
oh, it sure is.
I also found some, not the Oregon ash, the Cascade Mountain ash.
Oh,
So this is all in the last few years. It's like, what, how did I miss all this?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I also constantly pulling out non-native invasives. Yeah.
Gotta keep them up.
Another one is clematis.
Oh, the non-native clematis, the
Yeah,
traveler's joy, I think.
whatever it is. Yeah. And I also have some lotus in the ponds area.
Mhm.
So it's everywhere, isn't it?
Yeah. The one that we have a really hard time controlling is the English holly, because most of the invasive plants we'll see along trails or in disturbed areas, but holly is spread through bird droppings. And so the birds will fly off in the middle of the woods, and we can be out, half a mile from a trail, and we'll find a holly tree growing there. And those are pretty hard to control.
I think in the old days they brought in the holly and periwinkle actually and
Oh,
English.
yes.
So I have a lifetime project of getting rid of it
Yeah.
when I can manage to lean over that much.
Mhm. I see that Christine wrote that most of the plants in Upper Michigan are very different from what we have here, but Devil's Club grows there. I only recently learned that Devil's Club has that disjunct population up there. And then the Calypso orchids, of course, those are circumboreal, so you can find them in Eurasia as well. It's really nice to imagine our, beloved little orchids from the Northwest growing in so many places.
How does the Calypso orchid propagate? Because I have them on my property sometimes for years in one spot or whatever, and then they go away,
Mm-hmm.
pop up somewhere else.
I mean, they grow from seed and they have that little corm, so it probably takes them several years to develop from seed. Uh, yeah.
Oh, one thing you didn't mention is twin flower.
Oh, yeah. We don't have a lot of twin flower that I've seen here. It seems like it should be more common, but we do have an extensive patch not far from South Falls, and there's probably more patches out in the less developed areas of the park. It also blooms a little later. Sometimes I don't notice things as much at different times of year. The twin flower usually blooms a little later than most of our flowers that are blooming in April and May. And that's when I spend the most time out looking at flowers. Um, and so it might be that I'm just in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Right.
But just for that very same reason, I saw a species of aster just a few weeks ago that I've never seen before. And part of it is I'm probably not looking for plants in September or for flowering plants. But I went to a spot I hardly ever visit and encountered a new one I hadn't seen. That's great.
Just a couple other quick things as well. It looks like in the chat, Lisa had mentioned our hike that's coming up this weekend at Silver Falls. I don't know if you want to speak more on that, Lisa, you're welcome to, but otherwise I think there's a link in there to sign up. So if you're interested in that, feel free to check that out.
Yeah, I'll just say that this is kind of a collaborative event from with Alex from Corvallis. So we're trying to bridge the gap and meet in the middle. And so it'd be great to have some more folks join us. So yeah, so use the link and join us. The other thing that I think Matt started to talk about was the geology. And recently on Oregon Field Guide and down in OSU just a couple of weeks ago, Nick on the Rocks was talking about the ginkgo flow. And that's one of those Columbia River basalt flows that comes from Washington, comes through Silver Creek Falls and ends up at Yaquina Head. So, and you can see it, we're going to see it as we go under the North Falls, and you can actually see one of the casts from the old trees. So, so it's a geology adventure as well.
Yeah, the geology is kind of baked into everything here. It's kind of hard to get people excited about rocks, except if you're in 3rd grade and you tell them that we're going to see lava rocks, when they don't know that most of the rocks in Western Oregon are lava rocks. You know, they still get really excited. But that is North Falls, probably one of the best places to look at the geology of the park here.
So you could probably do another program on ferns, right?
Oh gosh, yes. No, I was going to include some ferns, but there, you know, that's a whole other thing. And there's some ferns that we only have growing in 2 places in the park, and you know, some of them I'd never seen before this year or last year.
What ferns are those?
Well, the goldback fern I hadn't seen before, and it grows right here at South Falls, and I've walked by it 600 times, I'm sure. And the maidenhair spleenwort grows in just a couple places, and it's growing out of these rocks, and it's like 8 feet up off of the trail, so it's kind of hard to spot. But that was really exciting to find those. And the leather grape fern, which is quite a common fern actually, but I've only seen that growing here in 1 place.
Matt, how about mushrooms?
Oh, mushrooms are not my strong suit. We have a lot of mushrooms here. You are allowed to forage here in the park. So most of the people that come and ask about mushrooms want to know about chanterelles, which are really common. I don't seem to have an eye for them. You know, sometimes you have to just like train your eye a little bit, but we have a lot of species of fungus here. And at our winter festival next month, we are going to offer a couple mushroom walks each day. And we'll be focusing on kind of those winter mushrooms, not necessarily the big ones that everybody wants to harvest and eat, but a lot of the cool little jelly fungus and questionable strapharias and sulfur tufts and all those ones that you see around here.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. If there's any other questions too, feel free and speak up if there's other questions for Matt or anything about NPSO as well. This is also just a good time to chat with people. And yeah, if there's anything else.
Want to compliment Matt on definitely your presentation was awesome. Thank you so much. And okay, I'm a local, so I grew up calling it Silver Creek Falls. And so it's really hard for me to drop the creek part. So
yeah.
Do you hear that too sometimes?
Yes,
I mean, you
we
grew
do.
up in Salem.
My dad calls it Silver Creek Falls all the time. And we officially changed the name in 1947.
Oh, well, I'm not that old.
It still lives on. It's like on road signs some places. And the idea of dropping the creek was that they thought it sounded too diminutive. Like people would not want to come see Silver Creek Falls because it's too small, and which sometimes of the year it is. But yeah, that's a common thing.
people do come from
Yeah.
all over.
Yeah.
And when Alex and I were there a couple weeks ago scoping out the hike, then there was a vehicle that came in it was right when the time had changed. So it was getting dark, and they were an East Asian descent family that had driven all the way down from Seattle. And he even had his mother in the back seat, and they were about out of gas.
Oh,
And they
no.
were looking for the lodge and the restaurants and the stations. And we're like, you just went there back in Silverton.
Yeah.
But then they wanted, I'm like, if you just go to North Falls, you can at least see one falls today. But
Yeah.
then they were going to go stay the night somewhere and then come back the next day. And then they're like, well, okay, so after we see these falls, then how do we get to Multnomah Falls? I'm like,
Oh,
oh my God, the gorge is a whole nother day.
yes.
So
Oh,
people do
gosh.
come from all around to
Yeah.
Silver Falls.
Yeah. And you noted like the time change. This time of year, it's really interesting because a lot of people don't realize how early it gets dark. And so we find a lot of people here, especially on nice days like we had this last weekend. We had 2 beautiful sunny days. And we find a lot of people who are 3 miles from their car and they have half an hour left of daylight. And so we've tried to stress safety and awareness and checking things before you come here.
I just wanted to mention that there's still plants in bloom, and so there's several other state parks where you can go and see them. I think we had 20 flower species in bloom at Columbia Hills State Park above the Crawford Oaks Trailhead a week ago, about a dozen at Cottonwood Canyon on the John Day River a couple days ago. And so they're out there. We'll be out looking for the first spring flowers here at the end of the month. So there's things in bloom out in the gorge pretty much every month of the year, and I'm always surprised at how few people are actually out enjoying the beauty out on our natural landscape out in the gorge. So get out there and hike.
And what is the river that's showing in your background here?
That's our picture from the John Day River at Cottonwood Canyon a couple days ago.
Uh-huh.
So it burned, and so it'll be interesting to see what comes back once the moisture comes down. But it's peak coyote willow color on the John Day River, which is what you see the orange there in the picture.
Second that, if you haven't been to Cottonwood Canyon, it's worth a visit pretty much any time of the year except summer, when it can be blazingly hot. But it's a really wonderful, wonderful park. Very quiet.
Matt, I know that for the annual meeting, some of the hikes are going to be down further in that older area, or well, at least more mature area.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about those trails at all? Do you know which ones they're doing?
Let me look real quick. So we're just doing the 2 here at Silver Falls. I can pull up our schedule just here.
They're down kind of by the Howard Horse.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I think that's one of the self-guided hikes that was recommended. There's a really great hike on the Howard Creek Loop, and it's a very flat hike. And it goes along the edge. I like to call it like where the forest meets the swamp, because it comes down from this hillside of mature Doug fir forest, and then it flattens out into this beautiful wetland with the meandering creek. So it's full of skunk cabbage and alders and willows and all kinds of really cool plants. And there's about a mile long section that it kind of parallels a road, but it's not a very busy road. And it's a really wonderful hike in any season.
Thank you. And you said that's one of the self-guided?
I believe so. I'm gonna have to double check on that. But that's another one. I also usually in April I'll do that hike about once a week. We posted on our event calendar on the state park's website, and we'll do a little guided hike there. And you might have noticed I can be a little chatty, and when I get excited about plants, I can talk a lot. So we'll usually do like this 2-mile loop, and it'll take 3 hours or something like that.
To that.
What was that, Lisa?
I said we're used to those kind of hikes.
Oh yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I feel like this is the group that does that too. Yeah.
Well, and everyone has good questions and notices different things. And
any other questions or thoughts? Okay, there's still a lot of people on, so if you do have anything, feel free to speak up, but
I was gonna say, I
looks-
see one more person signed up for the hike, so keep signing up for the hike.
yeah, grab those links now. I don't think you'll have them after. Well, you can always reach out to the NPSO PDX email for any information, or if you're interested in anything, but you'll lose those links once we log out, I believe. So go ahead and grab those now. But otherwise, if we don't have anything else, I think we can close the Zoom. This was a really great presentation, Matt. Thank you so much for your time.
of course.
It's really good to see everybody.